Someone asks why you did it, and the answer is already there. You did not go looking for it. You did not weigh anything. There was no gap to notice. It arrived in your own voice, finished, before you had time to think. You said it. They believed you. So did you. That happens to you every day. It is happening now. Something in you produced that reason, handed it over, and never showed its work. 1962. A surgeon cuts the bridge between the two halves of a man's head. Afterwards, nothing about him looks divided. There may be more of you in there than the one that talks. Not a second person, something quieter, something that sees what you see and never gets a turn to speak. You cannot go looking for it. The looking is done by the one that talks. The man wakes. He speaks. He answers anything you ask him. Then someone sits him in a dark room and asks the wrong half a question. What comes back is not what anyone expects. Start with the seizures. WJ is 48, and his epilepsy will not respond to anything. His convulsions are generalized. That does not mean the whole brain switches on at once. It means a seizure starts somewhere and pulls in networks on both sides faster than anything can stop it. He has been having them for about 15 years, since war injuries in 1944. February 1962. What is left is surgery. And this is not the first time anyone has tried it. Human cases were published in 1940, 2 decades before WJ, for epilepsy. So the cut is not the new thing here. What is new is what somebody does afterwards. In the years between, researchers cut the same band in animals, then showed one half something the other half could not see. The information stopped at the cut. That gave them a way to test a person, not a reason to operate on one. The surgeons are Joseph Bogan and Philip Vogel. The city is Los Angeles. They open his head and cut the bridge, then 2 smaller crossings underneath it. Now be careful about what that does. The wide, fast road between the 2 cortices is gone. The rest is not. The brainstem is still shared. There are quieter roots underneath. Each half still moves the hand on its own side. The halves are not sealed off. They have lost the main way across, and how much still gets through is what people are still arguing about. The bridge has a name, the corpus callosum. It is the largest bundle of fibers crossing between your 2 hemispheres, more of them than any other connection in your head. The 2 smaller crossings have names as well. You do not need them. What you need is this. He no longer has any of them. Stop on what he agreed to. Nothing is removed. Fibers are cut, and everything stays exactly where it was. Which is stranger, because afterwards there is no missing piece to point at, and it does not grow back. He has been having convulsions since 1944. 15 years of them before anyone offers him this. Why he said yes, I cannot tell you. That conversation is not in anything I can reach. A follow-up report 3 years later says what happened. The generalized convulsions stop. Not every seizure in his life, the convulsions. That is what the paper claims, and it is worth being exact. And hold the size of it where you can see it. 1 patient. 1. One man whose convulsions stopped is not evidence that an operation works. It is a reason to keep watching him. But think about what those 15 years were made of. A generalized convulsion is not a bad day. It arrives without asking, it takes the body, and there is nothing left over in you to manage it. What that costs depends on the person, how often, how much warning, what the law where they live allows. There is no single list. What is the same for everyone is the arithmetic of waiting. You do not know when. You only know it comes back. And here is the part that should stop you. In the clinic and in ordinary company, he looks unified. That is what the reports carry. Not that he is fine, and not that nothing changed. He speaks. He recognizes people. He holds a conversation. Whatever came apart in him does not show at a dinner table. It shows up when somebody builds a test for it. And that is the part that will not sit still. The widest connection in his head is gone, and the room cannot see where it went. He follows an argument. He would pass for anyone at that table, and nobody watching can tell you which half is doing the passing, because from the outside, there are no halves. Whatever holds a person together is still holding. It just has less to work with. 2 warnings before you carry it too far. This is an early case, and a chosen one. A selected adult in the 1960s, given a complete cut. The patients operated on today are a different group, different surgery. Their outcomes are mixed. So you will not hear that these patients are normal. You get something narrower. This man, in this decade, looks whole to everyone in the room. One more thing, and it is small. He has no name here. In the literature, he is 2 letters, W.J. That was the standard, and it protected him, and it is still how he is written about more than 60 years later. But sit with it for a second, in an episode about how many of you there are. The man the first report was written about is filed under an initial. Before that room gets any darker, you need one fact about your own head. The 2 halves are not copies of each other. They lean. Language leans. Attention leans. Spatial work leans. Motor control leans. Not all the way, and not by the same amount in every person. But they lean. The leaning is measured, and it is not in dispute. Your halves have been dividing the labor your whole life. You have never once felt it happen. Understand what leaning means, because it is not splitting. It is a matter of degree. 2 halves on equal weights on work that overlaps, but one of those leans harder than the rest. Speech. In the classic patient, the picture on the right of the dot has a name, and the picture on the left does not. Same man, same eyes, same second. One side can put it into words, and one side cannot. That is not a difference in intelligence. It is not a difference in attention. It is a difference in access to a channel. And you cannot check any of this on yourself. In an intact head, the labor is divided and the result arrives whole. One answer, one voice. No seam you could find with a fingernail. That is not evidence that there is no seam. It is evidence that you are well connected. Everything after this rests on that one uneven lean. The ability to speak was never handed out evenly. One word before that room goes dark. Not a thought, not an answer, the first word that arrives. The voice you talk to yourself in, the one that has been running all day, the one reading this along with me. What does it sound like? Yours? Somebody else's? Younger? Flat? Familiar? Most people have never been asked. Whatever came first is the answer, and you did not choose that one either. And you may be waiting for the hand that acts on its own. Most people have heard of it. It is real, and that is not what this surgery typically does. A small series in 2021 reported it in 3 patients out of 18, all with unusual language and hand dominance. In those 3, it stayed. How common it is and how long it lasts, nobody has enough data to say. so you get no number here. What is wrong with WJ is quieter than that. Then he goes to Pasadena. Different city, different building, different job. The operating room and the laboratory are not the same place and not the same people. One is trying to stop his seizures. The other wants what is left inside him. At Caltech, there is a scientist named Roger Sperry, and in his lab, a doctoral student named Michael Gazzaniga. The room is dark. There is a screen and a single dot in the middle of it. WJ is told to look at the dot and not to look away. That instruction is the whole experiment. Do it yourself for a moment. Fix your eyes on one point and hold them. Everything left of that point goes first to one half of your brain. Everything right of it goes first to the other. This is not about eyes. Both of your eyes feed both halves. It is about sides of the world. The left side of the room reaches your right hemisphere. The right side reaches your left one. And you undo that constantly by moving your eyes. So they do not give him one. The image lasts about 1/10 of a second. Which half of him has it now? Now they ask him what he saw. A picture on the right of the dot he names without effort. A spoon is a spoon. A picture on the left of the dot, and he tells them he saw nothing. Then they ask him to put his left hand under the screen and find the thing he did not see. He finds it. Read that again with your own hands on the table. His mouth says nothing was there. His left hand reaches into a pile and picks the object out. Both answers come from one man in 1 second. Neither of them is dishonest. One half of him saw it and has no way to say so. The other half can say whatever it likes, and it never saw a thing. You would have believed the mouth. This is not one lucky afternoon. It holds across objects, across words, across drawing. Put a shape in the left of his world. His left hand draws it while his voice denies it exists. And there is a question nobody in that room asks yet. Not, did the information cross? You already have that. The other one. The one about the voice. Because you would expect the voice to stop. Put yourself in his chair. Your hand keeps producing objects you have just sworn you cannot see. At some point, you go quiet and ask what is happening to you. The record does not show that. It shows a man who keeps answering, test after test, while his hand does something his mouth denies. Whether any of it troubled him, nobody wrote down. What was written down is the answering. That is the thing to listen for. So something is separated. That much is real, and it is held up ever since. But separated into what? 2 streams of information? 2 points of view? 2 of him? Nobody in that room can tell you. The experiment that could ask has not been designed. And the man who will sit for it has not had his surgery yet. 15 years pass. Say that slowly, because it is the strangest part of this story. Not 15 years of silence, 15 years of work. More patience, more tasks, careful maps of which half does what. And in 1981, Roger Sperry takes half of a Nobel Prize for discoveries about how the 2 hemispheres specialize. Not for a 2 minds idea, for the specialization. But something else gets out of the laboratory in those years, and it travels much further. You already know it. The left brain as the logical one, the right brain as the creative one. Whole personalities sorted into halves. Take that out of your head now. Because it will stand in front of everything that comes after this. Real lateralization exists. Language, attention, spatial work. They lean by degrees. That much is solid. But leaning is not personality. There is no population of left-brained people and right-brained people. Connectivity data went looking and did not find one. That is one study, and one study does not replace a field. The typology never had the evidence in the first place, so whatever the talking half turns out to be doing, it is not being the sensible one. And the question about the voice is still sitting there untouched. 15 years between seeing that something comes apart and understanding what came apart. That gap is not a failure. It is what the work looks like from the inside. You get the finding first. The meaning arrives late, carried by somebody who asked a different question. And look at what the delay is made of. Nobody is hiding anything. Nobody is slow. The right question has simply not occurred to anyone, because the obvious one is working so well. Does the information cross? That is a good question. It has an answer, and the answer is no. It is also the question that keeps you from asking the better one for 15 years. The better question arrives with a new patient. In the literature, he is PS. Same surgery, same dark room, same dot, same flash on one side. And this time, the researchers do not ask him what he saw. They give each half of him a picture. They let both hands choose, and then they ask the talking half to explain both choices at once. Understand what that does to him before you see what he does with it. Half of him is about to be asked to account for something it has no access to. It has two options. It can say it does not know, or it can answer anyway. What you are about to believe about yourself depends on which one it picks. 1977. 2 pictures, 1 flash. To the right of the dot, and so to the talking half, a chicken's foot. To the left of the dot, and so to the silent half, a snow scene. In front of him, a spread of cards. He is asked to point at what fits. You would point at 1. He points at 2. His right hand goes to a chicken. His left hand goes to a shovel. Both hands are right. Chicken foot, chicken. Snow, shovel. Each half solved its own picture cleanly. Neither one helped the other. Then they ask him why he chose those 2. And the half that answers is the half that never saw any snow. Watch what it does now. It is going to do what yours does. It does not stop. It does not say it does not know. It looks at what his own left hand has done and builds one story covering both cards. Chickens, a shed, a mess on the ground. A shovel to clean out the chicken coop. Delivered plainly, no hesitation you could hear. The half that talks did not see the snow. It explained the shovel anyway. Give that thing a name, because it is the whole episode. Call it an interpreter, and picture it plainly. Of everything inside you, one part has a microphone. Its job is not to be right. Its job is to hand you a version where nothing is missing. It is given a fact with no cause. A shovel, chosen by a hand it does not command. So it makes a cause. Then it stops. It does not flag the gap. It does not know there was one. So what is it for? Hold that. Now the size of this. You get the limit before you get the meaning. This is one patient. One afternoon. The same task has never been cleanly repeated across a group. One case does not settle how you work. One more limit. The interpreter is not a spot you could point to on a scan. The right hemisphere does interpretive work too, so the microphone is not a place. It is a position. and something is always standing in it. The limit does not weaken this. It puts it where it belongs. If that only happened in men whose brains had been cut, you could file it under surgery and go to bed. You are not going to be able to do that. The cut did not hand anyone the microphone. The cut is the only reason anyone ever saw who was holding it. Think about what the surgery actually did to him. It did not build an explanation machine inside PS. It took information away from one that was already running. In your head, the two halves share almost everything. Your talking half is rarely caught without the facts. Cut the supply, and for the first time, you can check its work against what it was never given. So this is not a story about being deceived. Nobody in there is working against you. The sentence is smaller than that, and worse. The part of you that produces the explanation does not have to be the part that had the experience. Those can be two different jobs. And you only ever hear from one of them. Put the surgery down for a while. Set it aside completely. Because there is a separate line of work on ordinary people with nothing cut. It was not designed to say anything about split brains. It is about choosing. It is about you choosing. And you should meet it on its own before anyone tries to connect it to anything. 2005. People are shown pairs of faces and asked which one they find more attractive. They point. The card is handed to them so they can look closer. Sometimes, quietly, they are handed the other one. The face they did not pick. Then they are asked why they picked it. Most of the time, they do not notice. And they do not shrug either. They explain, in detail, with reasons, about a choice they never made. Something about the smile. Something about the eyes. A preference described with complete confidence, attached to the wrong face. The same effect has since been produced in other tasks and senses. Keep this honest, because the honest version is strong enough on its own. People do catch it. How often depends on the task, on their confidence, on the size of the swap. So you will not hear that everyone always does this. Nobody has shown that. What you get is this. The machinery that produces your reasons can run all the way to the end on the wrong input and give you no signal at all. So here is a question you can actually answer. Think of the last decision you explained to somebody. A job you took, a person you stopped calling, something you bought that you did not need. You gave a reason. You believed it. Now check it. Do you know that reason is the reason? Or do you only know that it is the one that came out? One more thing to keep separate from it. In the clinic, a question built on a false premise can pull a fluent, invented answer out of a patient with memory damage. That is a described clinical phenomenon, with its own literature. It is not the face experiment. It is not PS. 3 different things that rhyme, and rhyming is not evidence. Hold me to that in a minute. Now the sentence this whole episode has been walking toward, and I want you to hear where it comes from before it lands. This one is mine. Almost everything you can say about yourself comes through the half that can speak. Not because the other half is empty. It can choose with a hand. It can draw. In some people, it has words of its own. What it does not have is the channel you check yourself on. You have never heard a second opinion because there is nowhere for one to arrive. Now stop, because the floor is about to move under you. Nobody has connected these two things with a scanner. There is no imaging study, no lesion case, No experiment that puts the split-brain interpreter and the person explaining the wrong face into one mechanism. The science does not go where I am about to go. What comes next is mine. Here it is. Same microphone. 2 settings. In PS, the input was cut, so the output could be checked against something. In U, the input is intact. The output is almost always plausible, and a plausible answer cannot be caught. Which means the reason you never catch yourself may not be that you do not do it. It may be that you are supplied well enough that nobody can prove otherwise. Which leaves you the quieter version. And the quieter version is the one that follows you home. No hand acting on its own, no second personality. Only this. A running account of your life produced fluently from partial information by the one part of you with a microphone. And you have every reason to trust it. Nothing that could contradict it has a way of reaching you. Earlier, I left a question open, and you have been carrying it since. What is it for? Something in you produces an account of your life at speed, out of whatever is in reach. That much is described. The framework says the job is binding, taking separate events and tying them into one story that runs in order. Whether that is all it does, nobody has shown. Binding is what it was named for. Now the floor moves again, and I will tell you before it does. Nobody has measured what this is for. What comes next is mine. Coherence is cheap. Accuracy is expensive. A system that has to keep acting on partial information cannot stop and audit itself every time a piece is missing. Saying, "I do not know," costs something. It stops the sentence. It stops the day. Saying something costs almost nothing, and most of the time it is close enough. Then hold that loosely, because I have just done the thing this episode is about. I was handed a behavior with no cause attached, and I produced a cause. There is no measurement underneath it. The framework itself is a reading, not a finding. And it is not one tidy module. Interpretive work has been reported on the other side, too. I am not going to tell you it evolved for this. Nobody has shown that either. But watch where that leaves you. In the face experiment, nothing was cut. Nothing was missing, except the truth about which card they were holding. The account still ran all the way to the end, confident, detailed, wrong. So the machinery does not wait for good input. It works with what arrives. How often it runs in you, nobody has counted. That it can run to the end on a wrong input and give you no signal, that part is measured, which is a comfortable place to stop, and I am not going to stop there. Because everything so far assumes there were 2 of something to bind, 2 streams, 2 halves holding different information. And there are people who have spent their careers with these patients who think that assumption is wrong. Not the mechanism, the split itself. Back to what can be measured. Because there is a strong objection to all of this, it is not a small one, and you are owed it at full strength. It says the split was never as deep as this story needs it to be. It comes from people who work with these patients directly. And on their evidence, they may be right. 2017. Yair Pinto, Edward Dahan, and Victor Lamb test 2 patients with complete cuts. The setup you already know. Dot, flash, one side of the world at a time. The classic tests asked several things. Name it, point at it, draw it, match it across the fields. But the result everybody carried away was the one about naming. Pinto asks something narrower. Did you notice that anything was there at all? And the patient's answer. Above chance in both fields, through speech, right hand and left hand. They report the presence of the thing, its position, some of what it looks like. Ask one of these patients to name what is in his left field, and he fails. Ask him whether anything is there at all, and he tells you. Failure to name is not the same as failure to perceive. That is the objection. It says the result everybody remembers may have been about reporting, not about experience. Their reading. Perception can come apart while the conscious agent stays one. In 2023, the same group publishes again, on one of the same patients, a longer look at an old case, not independent confirmation. Sit with it anyway. If it holds, the answer to how many you are is one. It was always one. The surgery divided some machinery and left the person whole. And everything you have heard tonight becomes a story about wiring, told as though it were a story about you. Here is the second reading, not a refutation, a second reading. Some information may still cross without the bridge. One half might cue the other through the body. There may be deeper roots carrying rough position. Each half does control the hand on its own side. Unified behavior could be assembled out of that, without the halves genuinely sharing what they know. But these are candidate explanations, not measured results, which is exactly the problem. So which reading is right? Nobody can tell you. The Pinto group has an answer to that. They argue cueing cannot account for identity information, or for the full pattern of what these patients get right. And their own paper carries its own limit. The same patients struggled when asked to compare directly across the two fields. So the split shows up where you would expect a split, and so does the unity. This is where the science is stuck. Not slowed, stuck. Every experiment measures an output, a word, a hand, a drawing, a rating of confidence. None of them reads an experience. And if there is something it is like to be the silent half, that half has no way to put it into words. Whether there is the argument. The patients who ever sat for this work are few, and no two had the same surgery, age, or history. You would want more. The operation is still done, but the classic, fully sectioned group that built this literature is not being replaced. So the common ground is narrow, and it is honest. The cut clearly separates some processes, others stay integrated. And behaving like one body is not the same statement as having one field of experience. Two different claims. Only the first is being measured. That is why you get this objection in the middle of the episode, not at the end. Because the answer to how many you are is probably not two. And the objection is not telling you the answer is one either. It is telling you the counting keeps coming back strange. When a question keeps giving answers that will not hold still, the fault is sometimes in the question. That is where I stand, on the broken question, not on either number. And I would rather be argued out of it than agreed with quietly. If you have a better third answer, I want it. You may not be a number. You may be something a number was never built to hold. In 1971, a philosopher named Thomas Nagel wrote about these patients, and he did not add a number to the argument. He questioned the counting itself. His claim is not that we do not know how many minds are in there. It is that the ordinary idea of one countable mind may not apply here at all, and that no definite number can be assigned. A philosophical argument about scientific results, not a result. Look at what counting needs before it can start. You need things that stay separate. A boundary you could put a finger on and say, inside is one, outside is another. Bodies have that. Minds may not, and the evidence keeps behaving as though they do not. Two hands, two answers. One man who wakes up and holds a conversation. And he does not leave it there. He takes the options one at a time. One mind, two minds, one mind with loose fragments, a single mind come apart, two minds only while the test is running. He works through all of them and finds none of them adequate. That is the shape of the paper, not a conclusion about how many, a demonstration that every available answer fails. So the honest position is stranger than either number. It is not that the answer is 1 and nobody can prove it. It is not that the answer is 2 and nobody can prove it. It is that how many may not be a question this thing answers. And here I go past him. That would make 60 years of experiments a very good machine pointed at a question with no shape. Nagel did not say that. I am saying it. And this is where it stops being about patience. You have never counted yourself. You assume the number every second, the way you assume the floor is there. Nothing has ever contradicted it, and now you know why. The count comes from the side holding the microphone, and it has only ever counted 1. It would report 1 either way. There is a way out of that, and it is worth naming even though it is not finished. If you want an answer to how many, you need a theory that turns consciousness into something measurable. Not described, measured. Integrated information theory tries that. It says what matters is not what a system is made of, but how irreducibly its parts hold each other. And it puts a quantity on that holding. And it is not vague about this case. In 2004, the theory says it plainly. Cut the colossal connections, and the one large complex that was there becomes 2 smaller ones. One in each hemisphere, each with its own private experience. That is a prediction, not a hedge, not an interpretation after the fact. A theory saying in advance what the surgery should do to the number. Now 3 limits, and they matter. The quantity is not a head count. Deciding how many conscious complexes exist needs rules about which subsystem counts as a system at all. No one has run that calculation on a real patient and come back with an answer, and the theory is under serious challenge. Its measure, its exclusion rule, and some of its consequences have all been attacked, and a large adversarial test in 2025 strained parts of it without settling it. But notice what it changed anyway. Somebody put, "How many are you?" in a form that could be wrong. That is rarer than it sounds, and it is the only way this question gets out of philosophy, and it does not exempt you. A measure like that would not only apply to a man with a cut in his head, it would apply to the one you are sitting in. Your unity would stop being something you assume and start being something somebody could check. Nobody can. Yet. Before the end, here is where each piece stands. Cutting the connections disrupts transfer between the halves. Fact. Many patients, many tasks, not in dispute. Hemispheric specialization is real. Fact. The personality version of it never was. The chicken, the shovel, and the explanation after it. One patient, one case. Never cleanly repeated. That such a patient looks like one agent in the clinic, observed. Whether that settles anything about experience is still being argued. Neither side owns it. 2 consciousnesses form, not fact. Consciousness stays 1, not fact either. A handful of patients, different surgeries, long histories. And that your unity is not a default, but an agreement, renewed every second. Speculation. Mine. Nobody has measured it. 2 more from the last stretch. That how many may not apply here at all. A philosophical argument, published and still argued, not a measurement. That a theory predicts the cut produces two, a real prediction, never run on a real patient, from a theory under active attack. And the last line of this episode about a story arriving late. That is a door, not a finding. There is a man in a dark room in Pasadena. His left hand is holding an object he has just told you he cannot see. Nothing in the record says he stops. Nothing says he corrects himself. He answers with the half that holds the microphone, which is what you are doing right now. And the answer is complete, and the answer is calm, and half of what happened is not in it. You would not hear the gap. There is no sound a gap makes. You are not going to catch yourself at this. That is not despair. It is the shape of the thing. The part that would have to notice is the part doing it. Every time you check, you ask the microphone whether the microphone is honest. It comes back and tells you everything is in order. It has never once been wrong. Because it is the one keeping the record. And it is going to do it again in a minute. About this. You will finish this and go and do something ordinary. Stand up, decide about food, and you will have a reason for it. Delivered instantly, in your own voice. It will sound exactly like the truth. It will hand you what you thought of all this, smoothly. You will accept it. You will not check. So being one person is not a fact about you. It is work. It is happening right now, underneath this sentence, and it has never taken a night off. There may be more of you in there than the one that talks. Not a stranger, not a second self. Something of yours that has been there for all of it and has never once been asked. It was there before you had a word for yourself. It will be there tonight while you sleep, and again in the morning before your eyes are open. And there is no clean way to call on it. No channel you can open. No second voice to check the first one against. Not because anything is hidden, not because it is empty, because the one side that got the words is the one you are listening to. If the part of you that answers is the only part that can answer, who would ever tell you about the other one? One more thing. That voice does not only work with missing information. It may also work with late information. The story would arrive after the event and get filed under a time that never happened. In the comments, one reason you have given that you cannot verify. I read them. Send this to the one person who will not sleep after it. Stay strange.